Welcome to the Mindful Millennial Podcast, where host Seth Marcus dissects and discusses all things impacting the millennial mind. Mentors, peers, and professionals share intimate conversations on subjects such as entrepreneurship, exercise and health, the blessings and curses of technology, travel, and how to navigate adulthood in this age of information. We're the largest generation in history, and we dictate the future. The Mindful Millennial finds a signal through the noise.
Hello, and welcome back to the MindMill Podcast. Guys, it feels like forever since I've been back with a fresh new episode for you. The MindMill Abroad series was a monster. 2 podcasts, 5 blog entries, dozens of photo albums, essentially 5 months of my life in Europe and North Africa. It was my biggest project to date, and I'm really proud of it, but also so happy to have it behind me. Go check it out. It's all at themindmill.com. Today we have an awesome episode with the one and only Taylor Ames. Taylor is a competitive triathlete, financial advisor, and fitness coach. His ambassadorship with Lululemon here in Denver, Colorado, has introduced him to other incredible individuals that has led to his newest initiative, bringing mindfulness into the world of finance. He and his team are disrupting the finance culture with exercise, yoga, and breathing workshops at conferences. The result has been beyond what anyone expected, changing the lifestyle and mentality of those in a traditionally conservative industry. Taylor is a force to be reckoned with, and we immediately hit it off. His positivity carries him through everything he does, and his vision on fitness, finance, and life are infectious. I had so much fun in this interview, and I'm honored to feature Taylor Ames on this episode of The MindMill. So Taylor Ames.
Seth Marcus.
Finally.
I know. It's almost a year now, 9 months in the making, right?
It was. I reached out to former guest Jillian Kevany, amazing person, and she said, "You have got to meet Taylor Ames." We chatted on the phone, and I was walking out of the country door. It had to be delayed, and now we're back, and here we are.
That was exactly it. I remember getting an email from Jillian sending out an email to our entire Lulu ambassador team. We call ourselves #Team CC, being the Cherry Creek Lululemon store. And it just said, guys, you've got to meet my friend Seth Marcus. I don't call him Seth. I always call him Seth Marcus.
Always. From the very beginning.
This is the cool stuff that he's doing. He's just an awesome human. You got to get to know him. So I remember our first call was in January of this year, 2018.
Just days before.
It might have been like the night before you left the country.
I was shopping at the Lululemon store. I had just used one of Jillian's hookup discounts or whatever.
Yeah, they're called I Love You Man, but exactly. I call them Bro Time. I take guys into the store once a month for Bro Time for a nice little discount.
I don't think Jillian calls them Bro Time.
I don't think that she calls them Bro Time.
but she had hooked it up, and I had just got a few clothes for traveling, and it must have been a couple days before I left.
Yeah, that was it. It was the night of the national championship game in football, college football, and I was getting ready to go to a climbing gym with a buddy, and I was like, I got to talk to Seth Marcus now, otherwise I'll never hear from him again.
This is going to be a great interview, and the reason I know that is because we both identify exactly what we were doing during this phone call. We've talked about this a little bit off air too. I don't know why. I couldn't tell you what I was doing when I first met Jillian. I don't remember that exact moment, but for some reason this one I do.
It's so funny, man, because little tiny things that occur to you in life for whatever reason become seminal moments that you remember forever. And it can be something as serious. We both remember where we were on September 11th, or something as silly and innocuous as I remember the first time that I talked to Seth Marcus. Right?
You gonna start calling me Seth Marcus too?
I will never call you Seth. You are Seth Marcus. Yeah, thank Jillian for that.
All right, well, I'm going to have to come up with a good name for you. That's not just Taylor Ames.
You can do that. You can do whatever. As long as it starts with a T, you can call me whatever you want. I don't really care.
All right, well, I'm going to think on that, and by the end of this show, we'll have a name for you.
All right, working title. It's a working title. Perfect.
So we're in my office, in my house right now, recording this, and Taylor was looking at this board I have of tickets, and he made this comment saying, "You got a lot of great things up here, but I don't know if we would necessarily be seen at the same shows." And so I wanted to dive a little deeper into that. What does that mean for Tay?
I've been called Tay. That's fine too.
No, not yet. That's not it.
I can appreciate everyone that's up on your board, like Humphreys McGee, you two. You're a big Fish guy, I think. I can appreciate that they're good bands and that they have good music. That's just not my thing.
Fish is polarizing. I'll leave it at that. People love them or they hate them, or they just don't get it.
I just don't get it.
Right.
That's fine. Good for you. Mm-hmm. I am like a gross, disgusting EDM guy.
There you go.
I love like Skrillex, DJ Tiesto, Armin van Buuren, Glitch Mob, all sorts of.
Glitch Mob's been around for a very long time.
I know, but it's just I'm all
way
about
before the EDM craze.
Exactly, they were EDM before EDM.
Absolutely.
I'm just all about like that heavy bass, a heavy beat. I did percussion growing up, so anytime that you can get something that's kind of that heavy, I really resonate with that, I guess.
Cool. Do you like Odessa?
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Very jealous I'm not going to the concert at Red Rocks this weekend, but got other things going on.
Okay.
2 shows sold out.
Wow.
It's gonna be epic.
I have a potential connection. I might shoot a text.
It could be.
A well-placed text
really
might
interesting.
help me out. I've seen them before. They put on such a fantastic show, and obviously they mix that EDM production with live percussion, so I couldn't see how you wouldn't like that.
That's exactly it.
Right.
So what I always ask people is, people always ask like, hey, what was the best concert you ever saw? I don't care about that. Who were you really excited to see, but then were disappointed after you saw the show?
The one that comes to mind is, are you familiar with Black Star?
Vaguely.
It's Mos Def and Talib Kweli.
Yeah, okay.
2 of my favorite hip-hop artists from the late 90s, early 2000s. I love so much of their music, and when I saw them live, they really disappointed me with just kind of like the energy that was being brought. And I have to say that the energy at a hip-hop show is hard to maintain. Now, they've kind of upped it. I've seen Kendrick, I've seen Outkast, and I've seen Jay-Z, and all of them were amazing shows. I've also seen, I think I've seen the Wu-Tang Clan twice. Did not really get down with it. I thought too many people repeating the last word of the verse.
All right, that sounds right.
You know, it's like Method Man's up there killing it, and like then there's 12 people who have to say, I'm not going to say the words because they're usually terrible words.
Not appropriate for a podcast, sure.
Exactly. But I would say that hip hop probably is the genre that disappoints me the most. In a live show. What about you?
I remember being really excited to go see Lana Del Rey at Red Rocks, and she didn't bring the energy. She basically sang her set and her album and got in, got out, took her paycheck, and was done. And so for someone who has such a unique voice that you get really pumped about, and then for it to be kind of, it was disappointing.
Especially at Red Rocks, because we've both been around here long enough to know that you see a show at Red Rocks and the bands, they just turn it up to 11 for those shows. Yeah. Especially some of the EDM artists. I mean, you can't even see EDM, a lot of it anymore, at Red Rocks because of the bass nectar broke the sound barrier.
Yeah, that's basically it. So now like the concerts have to be over at like 9:30 at night, which is great because then I can get home and get like a decent night's sleep.
It's great for us as, teetering on the verge of lameness.
Yeah, lameness. Old millennials were just like, I just want to sit and I just want to go to bed. That's
nothing better than getting home and being able to catch the evening news before going to bed.
Jeez, I don't know about that, but yeah, I got you.
See, Lana Del Rey is pop, and I'm a musician, as I kind of briefly mentioned before we got started, and there's something to be said about being in a pop band. I have some friends that are doing really, really well right now, but they are a pop band, and they tell me that they love playing all these shows, huge, huge concerts, but there's no room for improvisation. They can move things around a little bit, but there isn't the room to like really be excited by a show. Their best show is exactly as the blueprint explains, right? And that's what I think really captures why people enjoy bands like the Grateful Dead or Humphreys McGee or Fish, is because the band is just as much waiting to see what happens next as the crowd is.
That's really well said. Yeah.
And I think that's what keeps these bands around for so much longer too, is the thrill of, you don't know if the night's going to be, could be shit, could be a landmark show that kind of takes them to the next level. Yeah. So that's why the jam band guys stick around. And that's why they have such dedicated fans.
Yeah, that's very thoughtful. That's very well done.
You're right. I think about it a lot. I think about what I would love to do. And if I could be part of a band that plays different music almost every night, that would be a pretty good way to live.
Oh, yeah. Playing something live, seeing where it's going to go, seeing who's going to riff, seeing who's going to bring it, and be like, hey, dude, tonight you sucked. But like, hey, tomorrow's another chance. Like, we'll be all right. Absolutely. That's a good life. Not cool, bad.
Man. I went out of my way to not do too much research on the man, the myth. And
but not the legend. Sure.
Well, you might be a legend by then. Maybe I'll just call you the legend. That starts
could
with
work.
a T.
It does start with a T. So we can go with that.
So what came first, the fitness or the finance?
I would actually say the finance came first. I've always been enthralled with the stock market and with the world of finance and growing money in the stock market and everything. I had a paper route when I was 8 years old. it was my mother's idea. She had the foresight to not let me spend my paper out money however I wanted. I mean, when you're 8 years old and you're getting $80 or $100 cash a month, you are rich. You are the top 1% for 8-year-olds. So she didn't let me spend the money however I wanted. She took me to our stockbroker, our financial advisor, and I will never forget the conversation. He basically sits me down and he says, how would you like to be an owner of a company? And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, how would you like to be an owner of McDonald's? And I'm like, well, yeah, I'm 8 years old. I would love to be an owner of McDonald's.
You're just flashing all the Happy Meals.
That's exactly it. Because we'll get into me being a fat kid later, but like I used to go to McDonald's, I think once a week with my dad, or like everyone's experience with McDonald's growing up. So he told me that's what owning stock is becoming an owner of a company. So I took all of my paper out money when I was 8 years old and invested it in McDonald's stock. And I remember thinking, I was a weird kid growing up. I remember thinking, okay, I'm investing now. I'm 8 years old. This money's going to grow over time. What will I use this money for later on in life? I've always been good at math, so I kind of figured out how much I thought it would be. And I was like, okay, it's not going to be enough for a down payment on a house. Might not be enough for a car. I'm 8. Dead serious. 8 years old. What other big life expenses might be coming down that I would want this money for? What I thought was engagement ring. And so at 8 years old, I invested, not quite, ask my wife about that. I remember at 8 years old, I invested my paper out money in McDonald's stock with the thought that someday I would use it to buy my wife's engagement ring. I met my wife in college and we ended up getting engaged really young. I was 20, she was 22, she's my cougar. But when it came time to pay for the engagement ring, I just sold my McDonald's stock and paid for it with cash. Ultimately, that's what finance is. And that's what I get excited about, is watching someone take their hard-earned money, watch it grow over time, and watch it blossom into something like getting your wife's engagement ring, or buying a new business and being able to be involved in the community, or giving to charity or giving to your church, stuff like that. That's the stuff that matters. That's why I got into finance. Of course, there's all the other crap with it. But if you ignore that and just focus on the things you can control, focus on the positives, it's an awesome, fascinating industry to be in. I absolutely love it.
I'm fascinated by it. I was good at math, but I've never caught the bug for finance. To me, it's been kind of a necessary evil.
Sure.
Playing the credit game. You don't necessarily want to rack up credit card bills, but you need to in order to show that you're a reliable tax-paying citizen, if you will.
Yeah.
So we'll have a follow-up off-air where you can give me a little rundown on the hot stocks right now.
That's it. And you're totally right by calling it a necessary evil. I think that part of the problem of my world has been that our reputation sucks. We have done some things that are collectively really, really bad over long periods of time that have really soured people towards the good that can be done. I hope that narrative is starting to change, that the world of finance is being like, hey, we've done some bad things, we've done a lot of good, but we have to educate people on the bad, and we have to take ownership of it and really change that mindset, change that reputation. If we can do that, then you'll have to start having kids coming out of college who start investing, $5, $50, $100 a month, putting it away, and really starting to view this as something that is good and not a necessary evil.
You hit it right on the head with education. I think one of the main reasons that myself and so many people out there avoid finance and see it as an evil and see the banks as this terrible global power is that we don't understand the basics. There was not one point in going through school where they sat down and be like, we're going to take a break from calculus or algebra or anything like that. We're going to talk about personal finance and how to run your own estate, if you will. It's hard to call it an estate when you're 11 years old and caddying, in my case.
It's your estate. It's the money that you've accumulated, as small or large as it might be.
You're making X amount, and what you do with it is up to you. And a lot of people are going straight to McDonald's rather than investing in McDonald's. How did you kind of catch that bug at such an early age to start learning more about finance? Did it all come from that one meeting, or did it kind of hit you down the line?
That was the foundation for it. But then what happens after that is I'm just kind of a curious person. I learn by just asking a lot of questions. My motives are basically just, I want to learn. I know what I know, and I know that I don't know most things. I want to learn by asking people who do know and can inform my opinion about stuff. So just asking, what's the difference between a stock and a bond? What is a Roth IRA and what is an IRA? And tell me again what compound interest is. That was so great about growing up, is I had so many good teachers around me and coaches and mentors and all of that, that I was fortunate enough that they didn't really get annoyed by my questions. They would be like, that's a good question, and here's the answer. So being able to rely on other people to help educate you on the things that you don't know is very empowering.
Yeah, that's literally the basis of this show.
Good.
It's just asking questions I don't know the answer to.
Exactly, right?
And
it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I'm happy to have you on to share it and hear some of your wisdom. I can already tell that you got a lot in there.
If it's in there, it is definitely untapped. So maybe you can help me, Seth Marcus. I'd really appreciate it.
So you started learning more about it through your mentors, not through the school system.
The school system taught me the basics of like the time value of money and compound interest and things like that. But then other than that, it was the stockbroker that we had in my hometown growing up in Lincoln, Nebraska. I interned for a guy at a financial company while I was in college. And he was very, very good at what he did. He was very driven by money, but he took a lot of time to educate me on a lot of stuff. He would call me out quickly when I would do stuff wrong. I almost got fired as an intern, I think 2 different times.
Sure.
But he was always willing to be like, hey, I will answer any questions that you have. No question is dumb, things like that. And then on top of that, I got an internship when I was in college for a company in Wheaton, Illinois, suburb of Chicago, that sold products called exchange traded funds, which if you've ever heard of a mutual fund, it's kind of like that, but just kind of the next version of it. If you think of a mutual fund as like the original iPhone,
okay,
an exchange traded fund is like the iPhone 10. It's
Sure.
just the next evolution of it.
In a good way or?
Very, very good way.
Okay.
Very, very good way. So at this company, it was a small startup company. Our office was literally in a defunct bed and breakfast. And like our CEO's office was in an old hotel room. Everybody was willing to answer any question that you had. You could talk to the CFO, the COO, general counsel, all of that, and everyone's door was always open. They had great hearts, and I think that they realized that with all of the power that they had accumulated in the wealth, that there was also a responsibility to be able to give back and educate others and empower others with the stuff that they knew.
You're so blessed to have that opportunity at such a young age, because so many of us have not and never will have an opportunity to work with people with such conviction in the finance world. Because me, myself, being kind of a walk-in, if you will, to some of these financial advisors and institutions, you can't help feel like you know where the commission, you know where people are trying to sell you on things, on their financial products. It's very hard to see this person as having your best interest in mind, or if I'm right, a fiduciary versus a broker.
Yeah.
It's the moral side of it, because the numbers don't lie. If you can understand the numbers, you'll see your wealth growing. You can see how this makes sense. It's knowing that there may be something that is being covered up that kind of avoids everybody from just totally drinking that Kool-Aid.
That's exactly it. And that's part of our responsibility being in the world of finance, is we need to be more transparent as to where the money goes. And there's nothing wrong with compensating people for a job well done. You want people to be able to put food on their table. And I think that narrative is starting to change. I think that the old boys club, the olden days, are changing just because with the advent of technology, so many of those fees and hidden money is no longer hidden. But we have to continue to do a good job of educating the public as to where all that money's going, as to what we're doing well, and just kind of take things from there.
So you had given me a slight glimpse as to what's going on in your world right now. And obviously I'm super curious. I had to literally give you the physical cutoff to be like, no, stop. We're going to talk about this on the air. Tell me about what's going on with this finance wellness project you have going on.
So what I'm trying to do in a nutshell is combine the worlds of wellness and the world of finance. We know in the world of finance and in any industry, but finance is generally behind. We know that we need to start being more serious about our wellness. What's happening is, as we're getting older, people are starting to accumulate wealth and getting money, but we're anxious, we're stressed, we're nervous, we're divorced, we're overweight, we're unhealthy. And it basically is at what cost? Like the Bible says about Solomon, what is it like if a man gains the entire world and then loses his soul? So you accumulate all this money, but you're unhappy. So it's starting to change, and particularly with the millennial generation, we're starting to realize that we need to start being more serious about wellness. The problem is these worlds are so foreign to one another. Up until recently, when you think about wellness, you think about granola hippies and Birkenstocks and yoga that was way out there and woo-woo and all of that. It's caught on in the mainstream. You're seeing tech companies in Silicon Valley have mindfulness rooms and doing yoga and Tai Chi and things like that. In the world of finance, we know that like we should breathe a little bit before we like punch out a coworker. And we know that like maybe we should go for a run every once in a while. But other than that, we don't know what to do because the world is just so foreign to us. It's something that we've never had to think about or chosen to think about until now. And what I've kind of been fortunate enough to have access to is, like I mentioned, a Lululemon ambassador here in Cherry Creek in Denver. I've been given access to these amazing people who are experts and the best in the world at what they do in the world of wellness. So I just want to combine those two worlds. I had this seminal moment last fall. I was at a conference in Boston, and I basically lost my mind at this conference. I had a conniption. The conference started at 7 a.m, meaning that if I wanted to get my run in after flying in late the night before, I had to wake up at 5 a.m. to go do my run. So I'm starting my day
with time change.
Exactly. So I'm waking up at 3 a.m. Ugh. I start my day tired. We're inside, and no one wanted to be at this conference.
Those are stale, man. Those day ones before anybody knows each other at any conference. It's just awkward. There is no real icebreaker.
No, that's exactly it. And so the sponsors didn't want to be there. The speakers didn't want to be there. The attendees didn't want to be there. The person running the conference, I didn't think wanted to be there. I went out to lunch with one of my colleagues, and I was like, dude, I'm done with this. My life is too short to be miserable in Boston. This is a great town, and I'm stuck inside in a hotel. Nothing wrong with the hotel, but I don't want to do this anymore. We've got to change. We've got to be different. And he's like, I'm with you. He's like, but what? And I was like, I don't know. Why don't we start doing yoga at conferences? And he looks at me, he's like, yoga at conferences? I'm like, why not? It's a good way to start our day. It kind of gets us out of our comfort zone, gets our head in the right place. And from our company standpoint, it's different. It's good marketing. It's good PR. And he was like, okay. He's like, that's not really my thing. He's like, I can barely touch my kneecaps, let alone my toes, but go for it. Do your thing. So I was like, all right, let's try this. So a few months later, I had breakfast with a friend who is on Team CC, Lululemon ambassador, Dr. Krista Schwind. She's the only person in the United States who has her doctorate in yoga studies. And I kind of went up to her and I talked to her and I was like, I have this idea to have you come to a conference that I'm going to be at, have you teach a yoga class, and then I want you to talk to the conference about the science of mindfulness. I know next to nothing about it. This world is completely foreign to me, but I know that we need it. Are you willing to do it? And she said, yeah, absolutely. Let's give it a shot. Worst case, I could go out to Utah, hang out for a little bit, and if nothing comes of it, fine.
Right.
The guy who ran the conference is a good personal friend of mine. He's like a brother, and he's like, dude, he actually calls everybody bro. He's like, bro, whatever you want, you got it. So we show up to this conference. It's about 80 people. The first morning, we did yoga. We didn't really tell anyone that we were going to do it until the night before. It was kind of completely organic. 20 people showed up in a tiny little room. There were just yoga mats all over the place. And I was like, really? The first day of a conference, a quarter of the people showed up to do yoga. Like, that's interesting. And then my friend Krista got up to talk about the science of mindfulness after yoga later on that morning. And normally when you have these presentations, people are very respectful. They're paying attention to what's going on. But every once in a while, they're checking their phone or they're checking their laptop. They still have business to be done. When Krista was going, no one was looking at their cell phone. No one was on their laptop. Everybody was completely dialed in to what she had to say. And she went through the basics of stuff about the science behind breath and what it does to your body, what it does to your mind, and techniques that we can use in our daily lives to benefit ourselves. She did this thing with people called power posing, where you get up and get real big and basically trick your mind into being strong and powerful by looking strong and powerful. And I had this wonderful picture where I'm behind Krista looking out into the audience, and I have the entire conference of basically white middle-aged dudes doing power posing. And everyone is super, super into it. And I looked at that picture afterwards and I'm like, we have something here.
That's the indicator.
There's such a desire and a hunger for this, but they've never been fed. And multiple people came up to her afterwards and were like, this is the best presentation I've ever heard. We need more of this.
Yeah.
That was the start. That was me being like, I have something. I'm unique in that I know the world of finance. I can talk about stocks and bonds and ETFs and rising interest rates and all of that.
You can sit in those circles.
Not only can I sit in them, I love those circles. In addition, I have access to this world of wellness and the top people in the world at wellness who want to educate the masses on the wealth that they have.
Yeah. Nothing stronger than bringing a new interest into an already established community like the finance world.
That's exactly it.
And I'm thinking as you're telling the story, like, these guys are metric driven. These guys are literally all numbers.
Yep.
So if someone's coming in there and talking about science and actual discovery, I'm sure it's talking about blood pressure reduction and better sleep patterns and things that are scientifically proven from things like yoga and meditation. And they're seeing this and now they're starting to be like, okay, so now I'm actually being able to read the report rather than just get a testimonial from a granola hippie or something like that. Bringing that side to it. And then on top of it, you can't deny the emotional power of a good yoga class. We've obviously both been there, but man, those first ones, when you have that first experience, when you're like, I get why this is such a powerful tool that people use in their lives. And to introduce that to such a traditionally stale community like the finance, and all of a sudden you see these people coming alive in that picture, I'm feeling it just hearing the story, man.
That's exactly it. And if you can go to these people who are the decision makers at companies who don't necessarily buy into this and say, show me the ROI, show me the return on investment of this. And you say, okay, by creating happier, more well-rounded employees, we reduce employee turnover, which is really expensive. We increase morale, which increases productivity. Just right there, those two things make it worth whatever ancillary costs you might have to do some of these things.
You have this amazing moment of realization in the darkest of places where you didn't think that you would see this. What's the next step? I can count on more digits than I have the times that I get really excited about a project and then the harsh reality of making this something that actually exists comes rushing in, and you're having to moonlight your hours around your job to try to make something happen that hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
So
That's exactly
what happens after?
What happens after that is you just have to keep educating people. You can go in and do one yoga class or one breathing and meditation exercise, and people are like, that's fantastic. Now what? It's just a normal sales process almost. You have to then follow up with some materials and talk about, hey, here are 3 different types of breath work that you can do sitting in your chair at the office. And then having another follow-up meeting where you're like, hey, how has this been? How has your experience been over the last few months? What's been frustrating? And then just continuing the education process. And then additionally, besides just getting people more information and following up with them like you would in the sales process, it's a numbers game. You have to be teaching more people about this. So I have gone through my company, who's been fortunate enough to help me out with this, gone to other conferences, other investment conferences, and done yoga and the science of mindfulness.
Are you the one giving the presentations now?
No, absolutely not. I'm not a certified yoga instructor, but what I have is I have access to tools. I have access to the conference organizers.
You're the link.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
I have access to the conference organizers, and then I have access to the yoga instructors and the people who can talk about the science of mindfulness and really create a unique experience. And the reception has been not just good, it's been phenomenal, where people have told you, this is the best networking event I've ever been to. This was the best hour of the conference. And not that these conferences are bad, they're very good. The material is good. It's just what we're doing is so different. And again, there's just such a thirst and a hunger for something that people didn't know that they needed.
Mm-hmm. The traditional thought is, well, if I can leave a weekend at a conference with 36 business cards, 200 handshakes, and a bunch of new LinkedIn leads, that's a success. We don't think about how one pivotal moment, for me, I'm thinking of the first time I did acro yoga and how awkward you walk in with all these strangers and you're thinking maybe handshakes, maybe you'll have some small talk. But before you know it, you've got a 40-year-old dude you just met trusting you with his whole body weight or whatever. And you leave with this visceral feeling of happiness and connection to people that is so starved in the business world right now. And I think that you've just tapped right into that, and people are starting to see that at every opportunity that you give them.
That's exactly it. I think that when you can get people in an environment where they're forced to be a little bit uncomfortable, once they're past the uncomfortableness and once the moment is over, they are so much more willing to establish meaningful, deep connections with you. Right? CNBC just posted something a few days ago talking about if you really want to build a strong network, don't network. Don't try and get 200 business cards at a cocktail hour. Try and establish deep, meaningful relationships with a handful of people.
Share an adventure.
Yeah.
I just got back from these amazing trip, and the people that I met, we have these trials. We have these moments where we can't connect to the internet, or we're lost, or we're in a slightly sketchy situation, or someone's stuff got stolen or whatever. And it's going through these moments of discomfort that cause a much more solid bond between these people. And that's why when you meet people out there traveling or in something like acro yoga or like a dance class or something like that, the discomfort leads to you leaning on each other in a very real way.
That's exactly it. The next time that if I meet somebody at acro yoga or I meet somebody at yoga at a conference, that next time where it is time to talk about business and to try and get someone more interested in our products or whatever service we have to offer, they're going to be so much more willing to have that conversation with you and not only just let you come in and to meet with them, but welcome you in to meet with them than if you would have met them at a happy hour. Not that there's anything wrong with those, but establishing those deep, meaningful connections through awkward shared experiences is very, very powerful.
Some of the worst networking I've ever had was when I was working in the cannabis industry. It's hard enough to get into that small talk and have those circles with a couple of drinks maybe, or just with some new people. Add cannabis to the mix and it is damn near impossible. I avoided that stuff like the plague. I think that's why I had to exit the industry, at least temporarily, is because trying to meet people that are next level stoned is just near impossible.
No way.
And so
no way.
The people that I meet at yoga festivals like Arise last year or Wanderlust in the years before, I have so much stronger friendships with than anybody I met at a conference of any sort. Mm-hmm. So where is your company now? What's the future looking like? And this is the chance, man. Give us your pitch.
Yeah, so this is really interesting. So it's kind of something that's even a little bit different than just doing yoga and mindfulness at conferences. That I'm trying to use as a way to kind of promote the company that I work for. We're based here in Denver. We're a really, really young, dynamic company. And if you can say, hey, this is part of who our company is, in addition to all the financial stuff that we sell, that makes us different. And people are really, really receptive to that. What I'm kind of working on right now is something along those same lines, but also a little bit different. I helped co-found a company called Agogi Sport a little while ago, and it's kind of this holistic wellness, holistic fitness community mindset. We want to cater to people who are very serious and very intentional to building a sound mind, body, and spirit. And that comes from my background in the world of fitness. I guess the yoga and mindfulness is still something that's very, very new to me that I've been fortunate enough to be introduced to through connections with Lululemon. But the world of fitness for me is something that is also kind of relatively new. Growing up in Nebraska, I loved sports. I'm the biggest Nebraska Cornhusker football fan that you'll ever meet. We have season tickets. I went to every game from the ages 6 to 18. Sports matter to me. I understand the camaraderie of a team. I understand the joy and triumph and just the agony in suffering and defeat. And so sports is always something that I've participated in. But I am a really, honest to goodness, crappy athlete. I made varsity football my junior and senior year, but I only played on special teams. Like, I think I played 5 total plays on varsity in high school.
At least you got to be in the pep rally.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I got the letter jacket, and trust me, I wore it to school every game day. I wanted people to know that, hey, at least I'm on the team. Warm-ups were
I
like
bet you still wear it around.
Yeah, why not? I was actually home in Nebraska last fall, and my mom got out my Letterman jacket and was like, hey, you're going to your old high school football game to watch your team play. You should wear your letter jacket. I'm like, Mom, that's not a thing. You don't wear your letter jacket when you're 30 years old.
Wear your nicest sweater.
Yeah,
and put your Letterman jacket on.
That's not it. I also wrestled, and that was really my passion. My high school wrestling team was phenomenal. We were 3-time state champions while I was there, but I never contributed to the varsity team. My senior year, I dislocated my shoulder before the season started and had to miss my entire season. And I remember the night that I had dislocated my shoulder, and I immediately knew my season's done. I'm going to have to get surgery. I have these dreams of going to state and helping contribute to my team. None of them are going to happen. I remember my coach, who's one of the most influential people that I've ever had. He pulled me into a room right off the wrestling room. This is right after my shoulder's been put back in. And I'm just sobbing, knowing that all of these things are not coming to fruition. But he looks at me, he's like, hey, I don't know why this happened. He's like, I have no idea why this happened. This is horrible, but I know that God has a plan for you, that everything will be okay in time. And that moment, I was like, okay, this is not something that I could control. I can't control that my shoulder came out, that my season is done, that I'm going to have to rehab. But I can trust that God has a plan for me, that something good may come of this. It was dislocating that shoulder that led me to go to Wheaton College outside of Chicago, which is where I ended up meeting my wife, who I've now been married to for 10 years. I wrestled there for a couple of years and basically had the exact same shoulder injury, blew out my shoulder. And I was just like, why is this happening? I'm not a good athlete, but I love this. What is the purpose behind this? Eventually, a couple years later, my wife and I kind of started working out a little bit together. She was a collegiate swimmer and a collegiate water polo player, and she's a phenomenal athlete, and her entire family are phenomenal athletes. We kind of started swimming a little bit, kind of started biking a little bit, kind of started running a little bit together. She looks at me one day and is like, I think that you should try a triathlon. I really think that you might like it. I was like, okay, that could be like a check the bucket list sort of thing.
Sure.
I remember doing a tiny little sprint triathlon with my buddy Jason. I called my wife after the race and I'm like, well, I did it. And she's like, ooh, that bad, huh? And I'm like, no, I got 14th out of 256 people. I remember she goes, holy shit. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I think we might have something here. So one thing has led to another. And now I've become a competitive triathlete. I've done 6 Ironman races, countless half Ironman races. I've raced in world championships in Australia, the Netherlands, going to go to South Africa later this year, hopefully Switzerland next year. All of the trials and tribulations that I went through in high school and college, but then the fact that I just loved training and disciplining my mind and my body and embracing physical and mental suffering have led to this, to all of a sudden where I can kind of be really, really good at triathlon. So I've done that now for dang near a decade and are continuing to get better, continuing to enjoy success in that regard. Where that kind of fits into what I'm doing now is how I got involved with fitness and exercise classes through the job that I have now in finance. We have a tiny little gym in our office building, which is awesome. But we used to have somebody who taught classes for us. And they were kind of more like high intensity interval training, CrossFit, normal gym classes like you get at Compass Fitness here in Denver or something like that.
Right.
She moved away and everyone was really, really bummed because we were no longer going to have these classes. And I was like, well, I've been doing this for a long time. I think I can do this. Let's give it a shot. And that was 3 or 4 years ago. So now we've just continued to grow this little tiny family that exercises together in this tiny little gym every Tuesday. And now on Fridays, we go outside if the weather's nice enough. And I come up with exercises, and it's kind of your traditional thing that you would do in a tiny little gym. But we've created this little amazing family to the point where my buddy Zach approached me 18 months ago and said, dude, I think you have something here. You've built a family. We're a family of people who are very passionate about exercise and fitness and wellness. Why don't we start a company or write a fitness book that we could sell workouts to? And we kind of went back and forth, and I said, yeah, man, let's start a company where we do some of these exercises. And he said, okay, well, what would you call it? And I said, I'd call it Agogi. He's like, what in the world is that?
It's like your favorite Pokemon, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Besides Charizard, Agogi is my favorite Pokemon. If you've ever seen the movie 300, Agogi was the Spartan form of training. And it involved militaristic warrior combat training, but it also involved the training of Spartan citizens. It involved education and the arts and philosophy and all of that.
Interesting.
Their goal being to create a very well-rounded citizen. And that's
because you never knew when they would be called to arms.
That's
correct?
Exactly it.
Right.
And then even if you're not just called to arms, if you're at home raising Spartan warriors, you have to be able to raise them in a very holistic, well-rounded way. So if we're going to do this, if we're going to do fitness, it needs to be more than just exercises, because anybody can exercise, anybody can put together the workouts that I do. But what I care about is this holistic mindset of building better people. We care about things that matter into eternity. Let's build that. And so that's where we got the name Agoge Sport. We founded this company a number of months ago, and we're still kind of in the beginning processes, which is really, really fun. Designing a website. What is our tagline? What colors are we going to use? What makes us different?
Welcome
what makes
to the
us the same?
MindMill.
Oh, it's just the best, right? We are very serious about catering to people who want to build up a sound mind, body, and spirit. We think that community is out there.
Absolutely.
And you just need to find like-minded people.
It just compounds on itself. When you start to tap into that community, I imagine you've had the same experience, just how I met you. People are so attracted to not only your training, but your philosophy and what comes with the teachings, that they want their friends to come. They want to introduce you to their work group, and it just starts to grow upon itself. And that's exactly what I've noticed. When you have a true message, people are attracted to it, especially when you can keep that concentration of the message and be able to continue to expand it to the masses.
That's exactly it. And like I said, the workouts that we do, there's nothing special about them. Yeah, they're hard. They're as hard as you want to make them. But having this consistent message of, hey, we care about you as a person, and we care about your mind, your body, and your spirit, your entire entity. That's what people gravitate towards. And one of the ways that we do that is through this tagline of positive intensity. That's what we want. While you are working out, or while you are practicing yoga, or while you're doing whatever, we want you to be as intense and as focused as you absolutely can. If you're going to do something, do it, and do it to the best of your ability. When we do our workouts, what I say is I want to rip your effing face off. But I want to do it in a way that is as positive as possible.
Yeah.
I want you to have a good experience. We want you to be part of this crew, this part of this family. We want to lift each other up. And so being able to combine this attitude of positivity with this attitude of wanting to rip something's face off is really unique, but it's a lot of fun, and it's something that I think people really resonate with.
Yeah. You talk about positive intensity. It brings me back to moments that I've had when either in work or in traveling, and I always compare them to reading a book. How often do you feel like when you're reading, like, I just want to be done with this book. I really can't wait to finish this book. But you don't think that it's reading the book that is the experience. It's not closing the book at the end that is the experience. And it's the exact same when you're in your job. It's the exact same when you're in your workout. You can feel rewarded for finishing your workout, but having that moment where you are focusing entirely on this exercise right now is so, so special. And it's something that if you can apply that to your work and to your family time and to your exercise, it makes time slow down in the best possible way.
That's exactly it. And that's very difficult. That's something that needs to be cultivated and trained.
It's its own muscle.
That's exactly it, right?
You know?
That's what mindfulness
it has to be trained.
That's what mindfulness is all about. Is just like you're going to train your body, you have to train your mind. The two are connected. Descartes was wrong. You have to be able to train your mind just the way you train your body. One of the things that we try to talk about, in addition to positive intensity, is this idea of laser fucking focus, LFF. If you're going to be doing something, do it with the utmost focus that you can. It comes in very, very easily when you're at like mile 18 or 20 of a marathon. There's pain, there's suffering, there's everything. And if you can block everything out, that's LFF. That is how you get through those harsh, grueling last miles of a marathon or an Ironman or whatever. It can also be applied to folding laundry. If you're going to fold laundry, effing fold your laundry.
You got to fold that shit.
Yeah, exactly, man. Get out all those wrinkles and all of that. Every other stress will be there when you're done. But for that moment, be completely enthralled with the fact that you have the ability and the means to have a washing machine, and you have the ability to fold laundry. If you can train your body and your mind to do stuff like that, it opens up an entirely new, fun, enjoyable world.
For somebody who has just been introduced to mindfulness through the Lululemon team, You've got a great head start, man. I think you were building that muscle before you really had a label for it when you were doing all the training. I wanted to ask you, you had alluded that you were a fat kid.
Yes.
And then you hit wrestling. And I can absolutely relate with that. I did wrestling when I was in middle school too, and it was brutal. I can count on one hand the amount of times that I've thrown up from practice or working out, and it was every time during wrestling conditioning. So what was it that kind of kickstarted your fitness? Was it wrestling?
It was not wrestling. It was a girl. It was, I know those girls, man, they're the sirens of humanity. It was middle school. Michaela Miller, who I've since talked to about this. You know how when you're in 6th, 7th grade, you get your school picture and you always like come out and give them to your crush? I gave my 7th grade picture to my crush, Michaela Miller. I'm like, hey, Michaela, like, here's my school picture. I'd really like you to have it.
That's such a cute middle school girl name.
She's wonderful, but yes.
Me and Michaela Miller are going to be together forever.
Freaking Michaela Miller. We were not going to be together forever after she said this. She looks at my school picture and she goes, wow, you look like a chipmunk, because my cheeks were so fat. I started working out that night, and I would work out twice a day, and I lost 30 pounds in 3 months as a 7th grader.
Jeez.
My parents were like, kid's anorexic. Like, they went and talked to our pediatrician, all sorts of stuff, but that was it. It's one of those things where those weird tiny little moments of some girl basically not meaning to, but calling you fat can change the trajectory of your life.
I'm so glad I asked.
I was getting ready to meet my wife one night in downtown Denver, and I'm there before her, and all of a sudden I hear a female say, Taylor. And I'm like, that's not Brittany. What woman could know my name? I turn around, it's Michaela Miller. She lives here in Denver. I hadn't seen her in a really, really long time. And I'm like,
coincidence.
My wife is coming to meet me. She really wants to meet you. You played a humongous part in who I am today. And she's like, what are you talking about? And I tell her this story, and she's just mortified,
of course,
feeling like she's like such a horrible person. But my wife meets her and is like, oh my gosh, it's so good to meet you. Like, you've launched this entirely new world for Taylor. It's weird how stuff like that can come back and get you.
A fly on the wall during that moment.
It was a lot of fun.
We're jumping all around, but I had to get that story out because I wanted to know.
The fat kid story.
I wanted to know what brought it all around. So where do you stand right now with blending the finance and the fitness? Because everybody I've spoken to says that Taylor Ames is a force to be reckoned with. In talking to you, you're a badass. Where does this lead? What's the next step?
We're still building the foundation for what I want to be an empire. What's interesting is I don't know where it's going to go. I remember listening to a podcast, I think it was either with the founder of Patagonia or Cliff Bar, and he's basically like, if it feels good, I kept doing it. If it doesn't feel good, I didn't do it. We're kind of adopting that mentality. We're going to continue to do more fitness and exercise classes wherever we can. I'm teaching at Compass Fitness now. We're going to take Agoge Sport on the road, start doing exercises at Red Rocks, up in the mountains, things like that. And we'll continue to educate my world on the science of mindfulness. At this conference that I was just at this last week, I told the conference organizer how many people had RSVP'd for a yoga session that we did and how many people showed up. He was astonished. He said, that's incredible. So we're planting the seeds for what's going to be a really amazing community of people who want to exercise as hard as they possibly can, but then want to be as mindful as they possibly can in order to build up better citizens, in order to build up better Spartans.
Are you doing mostly body weight stuff? I mean, imagine if you're doing travel workouts, it's hard to do that with kettlebells and all the equipment.
That's exactly it. And with my background in triathlon, I don't need a lot of weights. There's absolutely nothing wrong with them. I did all my lifting when I was in high school and college, and I traded in that big muscular body for a more trim runner body. Sure. That's the cool thing is when you go to a hotel, when you're on the road, if you have a treadmill and you have a yoga mat, you've got a really, really good workout, and you don't even need the treadmill. So yeah, it's mostly high intensity, short interval stuff with a good amount of rest to get people's heart rates up. And then every once in a while, we'll mix in some cardio, and we'll be like, hey, let's go run a 5K. And people hate running. They hate running those 5Ks, but if you can educate them on what makes running fun, work on their form, things like that, they end up loving it. So really a mix of a bunch of different stuff.
I wanted to ask you about this. I love running, but I intentionally do it sparingly because when I start really loving running, it's the quickest path for me hurting my knee. To me, that's always been a strange concept because running is the most primal form of exercise. Like, you can't think of something that is more necessary to the human species than running. Yet it seems to be the cardinal causation of injury.
That's exactly it. Man, you got to read a book called Born to Run. Basically, this book talks about why people hurt when they run. And there's a bunch of reasons, but they talk about the industrialization of the running shoe industry. That adding inserts and all of these different gizmos to something as simple as a shoe has wrecked our form and wrecked the way that we run. That when we were cavemen, we used to run barefoot and run down our food. And we would run to exist and run to thrive. What happened to that? And basically with the advent of the running shoe, it's changed to where people now have so much padding that they are not aware of poor running form. And over time, their shins hurt, their knees hurt, their IT bands hurt, and they can't figure out why.
Sure.
So you're starting to see this almost running renaissance where people are starting to focus on run form first. They're starting to run barefoot in grass fields, run barefoot on tracks to get that immediate feedback that, hey, your running form sucks. You need to switch it or you're going to feel like you broke your shin bone.
And then you find the equipment to match the form?
That's exactly it.
Okay.
And every shoe is different. Different shoe companies do things differently. Being a triathlete, I wear Newton running shoes, which are kind of a totally different type of running shoe.
Are they more barefoot style or are they pretty thick?
I wouldn't say that they're more barefoot style just because I weigh about 190 pounds. So for me to run barefoot would really, really hurt. But they have like these lug nuts in the front of them that force you to run on your forefoot a lot more, which causes the absorption of the shock to come through your calf as opposed to your shin. And it just makes for a better run. So that's part of what we want to do is educate people on proper running form and proper stretching afterwards. If you can get to the point where you can run a lap around the track or a half mile or a mile or however long, but you don't hurt afterwards, you're naturally just going to start to enjoy it because primarily we were born to run. And if you can get people to be excited about going for a run, sky's the limit.
Yeah. And there's no denying that endorphin release that happens at 10, 15, 20% into any exercise where you're like, this doesn't suck anymore. This is actually something that I'm feeling charged to do. And I think that the hardest part is starting. It always is, right?
Oh, yeah,
just
absolutely.
Starting anything is always the hardest. So in Agoge, is that part of the Agoge training? Working on the form of, especially like running, but also in HIIT style workouts and stuff too?
Absolutely. Anytime that you're going to teach something, there's a responsibility that you have as a teacher to educate correctly.
Sure.
So whatever class we're doing, I'm running around, looking at people's form, helping adjust people on a constant basis. People want help and they want to be vulnerable and they want to do things correctly. And so if you can, in a very positive way, be like, hey, shorten your stride just a little bit. You're kind of loping too much like a basketball player running up and down the court.
Yeah.
Shorten your stride, or hey, get your butt back a little bit like you're sitting in a chair. Get your chest up on your squat. Look up where the wall meets the ceiling. Mm-hmm. Things like that. Just little tiny tweaks, but then doing it in a way that's positive and reinforce that when people start to get it. That's wonderful. There's one guy in my class that's been coming from years, and for the life of him, he can't figure out how to squat correctly. We're now finally at the point where he looks like he's done squats in his life. And to be able to teach people proper form and then to be able to watch them evolve into people who can do stuff correctly and watch the joy that they get from doing that, it's a really, really special experience.
Yeah, man. Cognitive reception of information is one thing, but muscle memory is totally different. You can sit there and talk till you're blue in the face on what makes a proper squat, but until they realize that it takes almost falling backwards before you start to get that engagement in the back body, instead of leaning so far forward, it's not until they figure it out themselves that the real process begins.
That's exactly it.
I wanted to ask you about the names of your workouts.
Sure.
Because I heard from Jill that you got pretty creative with them.
Part of it, man, is just you got to have fun in life. I learned that a while ago in finance, just being young and being kind of weird and quirky. I don't fit with the traditional clean-cut, clean-shaven mold. I'm weird. You got to embrace that. So if I'm going to work out, I'm going to have some fun with the workouts. So if you're doing a workout where you're doing 10 of something, then 20, then 30, then 40, and up, rather than calling it like a pyramid or whatever, I call it Stairway to Heaven. And I talk about the song by Led Zeppelin. And then the next week when we might do the same workout, but start at 100, then 90, then 80, then 70, rather than calling it a ladder, I call it Paradise Lost. And I'm like, hey, we're going to descend into hell. And if you're going to do like 3 different types of exercises, rather than calling it like a triangle or something like that, I'll be like, hey, we're going to call it a menage a trois. If you can just do stuff like that, that one gets people to remember something, they'll remember your workout, but then to get them to laugh, to get them to say, okay, I'm comfortable here. I can laugh at the dumbness of this exercise. It makes for a more enjoyable experience. And isn't that what we're ultimately kind of looking for?
Well, it definitely helps me be present when I can learn to laugh. You're talking about this positive intensity, and sometimes it's easier to be intense than it is to be positive. I'll get all sorts of frowny face during my workouts. Like, I'm starting to feel like a badass, and I need somebody to make me laugh in the middle of it too. Remind you that this is also a form of play. For a lot of adults, it's the only form of play they're going to get during the day. So you might as well kill 2 birds with one stone. Get your amazing workout in, take it seriously, and smile.
That's exactly it. So the perfect way to do that. And when I work out, I'm intense. I have LFF. I want to rip my workouts face off. But if I'm doing something like that and I see people are getting really, really serious, and then I make just some dumbass noise or make some stupid joke or some sort of Seinfeld comment that just kind of breaks up that tension, it one helps people to relax, so they'll be able to press the reset button, have better form and stuff like that. But then it just helps add to their experience and it helps them to have a more enjoyable time while they're working out.
This is awesome. And I know that this is far from the last time we are going to see each other and speak. Where can people find you, and what's going on in your world right now where people can connect? Yeah,
so we're currently on Instagram on Agogi Sport. Our sign is at Agogi_sport. We're getting ready to launch a website here within the next couple weeks or couple months that will just be agogisport.com. To track the workouts that we're doing and where we're going to be at different times, just follow us on Instagram. We tend to work out together on Tuesdays. We run together on Thursdays and then work out at Civic Center Park or at the Capitol here in Denver on Fridays. And then I'm actually fortunate enough through our mutual connection, Jillian, to be a part of Compass Fitness, where I'm working and teaching classes at Compass every Monday evening, and to be able to have access to their gym and to have access to battle ropes and slam balls and yoga mats and boxes and stuff like that. It's a much different experience than being in a tiny little office gym.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just went there for the first time a couple days ago to have lunch with Jill, and it is a fantastic facility. I'm going to come to your class next week, man. Just consider it done.
I can't wait to have you. We won't even get into who's going to win the Compass and who gets to break down the class at the end and all of that stuff. You got to keep a couple things in the back pocket, a couple surprises.
No. Just show up, and I guarantee you'll be surprised.
That's exactly it, man.
Taylor, thanks so much, man.
Thank you, Seth Marcus. Cheers.
Hey, everyone. Thanks so much for listening to the Mindful Millennial Podcast. If you loved this episode, check out some of the other MindMill episodes. They're all free and available at themindmill.com and on all the major podcast platforms. Also, please take a second and leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. It's incredibly easy, and it really is the best way to help the show. Stay tuned for more MindMill episodes coming down the line. I'll keep them interesting for you, I promise. Take it easy. Today's episode is sponsored by Best Self, makers of the Self Journal and other phenomenal productivity and mindfulness tools. At the start of 2017, I had New Year's goals like so many of us. However, having just turned 30, I wanted something different. I wanted to actually achieve my goals, not kick ass in January, followed by the quick decline back to where I started, which inherently feels worse than when I started. I decided writing my goals and recording my progress is the best way to stay the course. I had always wanted to journal regularly, but like many of us, the phobia of the blank page was enough to keep me kicking the can down the road. The self-journal was different, however. Unlike a traditional journal, the self-journal is a 13-week goal-oriented planner journal. It's designed to teach the user to set a tangible goal, break it down into achievable tasks, and work every day towards completion. The journal also includes areas for gratitude and reflection, plus notes and scheduling. So I took a chance. I got my journal and committed to the 13-week program. The outcome was greater than I could ever have imagined. The ironic thing was, I didn't achieve my first goals. However, what I did achieve was the ability to actually see my progress, what I was avoiding, and what to do next. I could actually give myself a grade on my work, not this pass-fail bullshit mentality we seem to judge our lives by. My productivity skyrocketed, along with my routines and overall happiness. I found myself able to focus on the moment, the present, rather than reliving the past or anxiously anticipating the future. If I thought of something, I now had a place to unload it from my mind. Fast forward a year, and I'm now on my 4th journal. What started as a scary new addition to my busy day has become one of my most useful tools. I can look back on this pivotal year of my life, see how far I've come, know where I'm at, and what lies ahead. So check it out. Join the thousands of people who have had their lives radically improved with the assistance of Best Self. Check out bestself.co for all the journal options and other amazing productivity tools. Or follow the link in the episode's show notes to support the Mindful Millennial Podcast. It's all available there.